The young man, strikingly handsome yet deeply disillusioned, was none other than our protagonist, Alon. He had once been a slave, laboring 78 hours a week without respite. And now, somehow, he found himself inhabiting the body of a noble in a fantastical world. On the surface, it sounded like a stroke of luck. And, truth be told, it was sort of. The problem was, the character he had possessed was utterly unremarkable. Illiterate, powerless, living each day in idle indulgence as the pampered son of a count. The only notable thing was that he had no idea where he currently was. As Alon basked in the attention of the maids attending him, one of them leaned in and reminded him gently, "Sir, you should retire early tonight. The young masters will be returning tomorrow." Surprised, Alon asked, "The young masters?" The maid blinked, startled by his ignorance. "Master Leo and Master Tonio, sir." "You speak as if you have never heard of the Palacio family," he muttered. At the mention of that name, Alon froze completely. The Palacio family, a name that struck terror into his very core, so familiar it was almost unbelievable. The maids looked at him with growing concern. "Young master," they murmured, worried. Alon pressed his face into his hands, a rising sense of unease tightening his chest. Could this really be psychedelia, he thought, recalling the title of a game he had once played. It was a game he had snatched moments to play during the rare scraps of free time he had as a corporate slave, a turn-based role-playing game. No matter which storyline a player chose, the appearance of the 5 great sins, wrath, greed, sloth, pride, and obsession, would herald catastrophe. Kingdoms would crumble, noble houses would fall, cities would descend into chaos. Among them, the Palacio family stood out as the most infamous, a decadent noble house, introduced in side quests before the main storyline even began. Alon sank to his knees, utterly defeated. "Of course. I know this place all too well," he murmured, rifling through his memory for every scrap of information he had about the Palacio family. He gazed hopelessly at the grand mansion before him. Seriously, why does it have to be the Palacio family, the first noble house to be utterly destroyed by the 5 great sins, please? Let me go back to being a slave. 78 hours a week would be a blessing compared to this. What good was a life of luxury when, 10 years from now, it would all collapse? The sensation of fleeting comfort now felt far worse than half a year's worth of unpaid wages. Why, he wondered, did someone like him, someone who had traveled across worlds, have no privileges whatsoever? Wait. Privileges, of course. Knowing the game's outcome 10 years in advance meant he knew the future. That meant he could prevent the causes of annihilation before they ever occurred. Determined to enjoy a peaceful, noble life, he resolved to reform the 5 great sins. They are probably still just children. Maybe there is still a chance to save them, he reasoned. 2 months later, in his study, he listened to a report. "I have rescued the orphaned children in the East. More precisely, those who had been turned into living test subjects. Among them, I have entrusted the care of the orphanage to a young woman named Yusha." Alon felt a swell of satisfaction. "My instincts were right. You truly are a capable person." "Yes, sir," she replied, bowing. Was that a compliment? Alon could never tell. The young master's face never betrayed emotion. Nodding decisively, he said, "Indeed. Evan, from now on, I expect your support in all matters." Evan stammered, clearly overwhelmed. It is hard to get used to this." Alon gazed at his reflection in the mirror and thought, this face used to show every expression so clearly. But it seems like only the outward expression never fully synced with the soul. Evan was one of the few supporting characters in the game, a loyal figure, which was exactly why Alon had recruited him. Evan spoke cautiously, "Thank you for your compliment, young master, but you are saying this raid was to rescue the girl named Yusha, correct?" "That is right," Alon replied. Evan continued, his tone tinged with respect. "I must admit, now I understand why you chose her. Even with my experience, wandering for years in the mercenary world, that girl is far from ordinary." He recalled the moment they had entered the prison to rescue the children, still astonished. "She is so strong. I do not understand why she allowed herself to be captured in the first place. Why did not you bring her here? Would not that have been to your advantage?" Alon nodded in agreement. "A fair observation." He fell silent for a moment, deep in thought. On the surface, it may seem like I am wasting an untapped source of power. But maintaining the current state is part of the plan. She is a member of a bloodline that has signed a contract with an indescribable entity from another world, a being of unimaginable power. In the future, she would become Wrath, one of the 5 great sins, responsible for hundreds of deaths. But if she is raised in a peaceful environment, she may never walk the path of destruction. In that sense, I have defused the first ticking time bomb. Now I just need to come up with a reason not to bring her here. Alan's voice hardened slightly. Exactly. He pressed his hand to emphasize his point. The time is not right yet. Evan's brow furrowed in surprise. The time is not right. Alan nodded. Yes. Ensure this mission remains secret, and provide for her fully. I understand, sir, Evan replied. Suddenly, Alan produced an item. And this? Give it to Yusha. Evan looked puzzled. A letter, is it important? Alan shook his head lightly. Just a letter of comfort. She went through horrors living experiments, so a small gesture of reassurance will help her regain calm. Evan accepted it carefully. You actually wrote a letter like this yourself. I will deliver it faithfully. Then he mounted his horse, and Alan watched from the window as he rode away. A twinge of unease gripped him. Will it really provide any comfort at all? The true contents hidden within that seemingly simple letter were lines Alan had recited countless times during his hours playing the game, a charm meant to befriend the bloodline and soothe them. Wrathful sins, calm yourself. Sorrows of the dark, oblivion of the light, one will, one belonging. These were all incantations appearing in the storyline of Wrath. But in the game, she had already succumbed completely to darkness, cold, unfeeling, too late for any intervention. Back then, failure led directly into battle. But now, 10 years prior to that catastrophe, perhaps it was not too late. Stretching with a sigh, Alan muttered, one of the 5 harbingers of doom has been disarmed. Now on to the next. It is absurd to think that a single charm could forge a bond with a monster. But after all, this is a race that worships beings from other worlds. It might just work. Those at the extreme edge of the Zealot faction, their thought patterns are nearly impossible to grasp. Elsewhere, Yusha silently held the letter in her hands, absorbed in its contents. Evan jumped, startled. Magical energy still radiated from the girl, a phenomenon that defied reason, yet she carried an unnatural, eerie quality, as if not a single emotion stirred within her. She spoke, her voice calm and unflinching. It was you who delivered that letter, was not it, Alan? Why did not he summon me to his side? Panic surged through Evan's chest. What on earth? He thought, floundering for words. It is. That. He stammered. He studied Yusha carefully. For magical energy to manifest so tangibly, it usually required the mastery of an expert. He recalled Alan's words, the time is not right yet. Hastily, he tried to reassure himself, muttering, right, it is just that the timing is not correct. Yusha, sensing his unease, withdrew her lethal aura. Remember the contents of the letter, she said, her tone soft yet resolute. The sorrows of the dark, the oblivion of the light. They will gradually fade away. A stirring of emotion crossed her, subtle yet undeniable. This must surely be a promise known only to the master, she whispered. All right. I think I understand, at least in part. Evan, trembling, sweat coursing down his body, remained on high alert, fully aware of the danger and power in front of him. Yusha's smile was chilling in its calmness, yet somehow imbued with obedience. I will follow the will of the master, she said, resolute. Meanwhile, Alan lay on his bed, a sense of profound satisfaction settling over him. Today has been truly fulfilling. Even the bright moon seems to cheer me on. I must push harder for the next stage. On this side, a stack of books toppled from the shelf, striking Alan on the head. He squatted on the floor, groaning, there is nothing here either. Trying to find clues about the third thread is giving me a headache. Evan hurried over, speaking quickly, young master, we have already rescued the second child you mentioned. A bump had already formed on Alan's head. Really, you made sure to treat the child properly, right? He asked, rubbing the sore spot. Of course, sir, Evan replied. Just then, the door suddenly burst open with a forceful kick. A brash young man strode in. Well, Is not this him, the second young master of the Palacio family, Tonio, he announced, whistling mockingly. How is a literate less fool like you even holding a book? Oh, right. I heard you have been studying recently, have not you, Tonio added, glaring. Alon inwardly groaned. He has always been such a nuisance. How did I ever put up with this before? He wanted to strike back but instead forced himself to act obedient, bowing slightly. It seems you still want to use the library. I will take my leave, then. Tonio grinned arrogantly, stepping on Alan's foot. You know your place, do not you? Suddenly, a knife whizzed past Alon, embedding itself in the wall. From somewhere farther off, a voice called out, sharp and irritated, you pests are far too noisy. Tonio scowled, muttering, what the hell? The eldest son entered, pointing sternly at them. I do not wish to see blood spilled first thing in the morning. Clear out. This was Leo Palacio, the eldest of the count's sons. Immediately, the two brothers clashed violently. Brother, I told you to leave that rude attitude behind when you enter the library, Leo snapped. Clear out while you still can, Tonio shot back. Alon quietly slipped away, silently grateful as the Palacio estate disappeared from the game map. He recalled his mission, to investigate the Palacio dominion within the kingdom of Asterial. The territory was rife with corruption, overseen by an organization called Avalon. Yet their influence extended further than he had anticipated. Essentially, these worthless siblings were squabbling over who would inherit the family headship, while the underworld held major players and a large-scale drug trade was being managed. Alon realized that for his own survival, confronting these two directly would be suicidal. So he and Evan silently let the brothers fight it out, then slipped away. Meanwhile, the library erupted in chaos. Objects flew in every direction as the brothers' battle intensified. Evan adjusted Alan's hair, and Alon inwardly resolved to enjoy life as the weak, illegitimate, and seemingly powerless son of the family. He returned to his room, stretching out with a sigh. Even though the second child they had rescued seemed far from ordinary, Alon lounged lazily, perplexed as he glanced back at Evan. Evan, in turn, was equally baffled. How could someone like this know about the illegal slave market, or the secret biological experiments taking place in other regions? Alon yawned and muttered, exhausting. Evan suddenly spoke up, hesitant yet curious, young master. You are truly unusual. You sent that child to an orphanage. Alon did not meet his gaze, his thoughts wandering. Unusual, that child is not just unusual. He is destructive on an entirely different level. Within an empire forged from multiple allied nations, with Callian as the central kingdom, the boy rescued from the illegal slave market was actually the second overlord of psychedelia, Deus Macallian. After being sold into slavery and repeatedly abused, transferred from one place to another, he became the embodiment of one of the 5 great sins, sloth. He had transformed into something almost demonic, a living embodiment of ruin. Then he went on to destroy entire nations in ways more horrifying than I could have ever imagined. This particular segment of the storyline had left countless players stunned at the sheer brutality of the game. Despite being labeled as sloth, he was recognized as extraordinarily diligent, repaying both kindness and enmity many times over. That was exactly why I had emphasized to Evan the importance of treating Deus with the utmost care. Trembling, Evan held his teacup, muttering in awe, it is incredibly vivid. Alon, calm as ever, replied, the reason I sent him to the orphanage is that the time is not right yet. I suspected as much, Evan responded. So the letter you sent to Yusha. It was about the second child. Alon recalled the letter and confirmed, yes. He also recounted the part about the keyboard discussion. I instructed her to take care of the somewhat frail child I sent, he explained. He looked so lonely, his body covered in wounds. At that moment, a small pair of feet approached. You. A calm, unmistakable voice called from behind Deus. Are you broken? The words carried an eerie serenity, and a faint movement of his hand left traces of that presence. Yusha stepped forward, addressing Deus directly. It is you, Haeyang, is not it? She smiled, adding, yet the great moon still chose you. Congratulations. Her smile twisted with a witch-like malice, her entire being radiating immense magical power. Now, feel the power you have been granted. and let your potential be unleashed. She extended her hand toward Deus, smiling. If you remain loyal and follow your master's orders, vengeance will be yours. Gradually, magical threads began to emanate from behind him. Yusha, eyes on the letter, said softly, "Now it is time for me to send my first reply." Under the moonlight, Alan's words appeared before her. She intended to deliver them with a gentle greeting. Meanwhile, at the Count's residence where they were staying, Evan flung the door open and stepped inside. Alan murmured, "So? Where is the third person?" Suddenly, Evan said, "A big problem, sir." "The scoundrel." "No, I mean, the second young master," Evan clarified. Alan raised his head, startled. "What, you are saying that young master is dead?" The death of the second young master had occurred completely unexpectedly. Indeed, they soon gathered at the funeral for the second young master. On either side of Count Palacio stood two beautiful young women, pouting playfully. "Master," the other one keeps complaining. "When will this end? I am so bored," one whined. The other chimed in, "I am hungry." Alan could only stare, speechless. Bringing drugs and women to the funeral of one's own son, he already knew this family was corrupt. But this was true dark fantasy. Alan glanced at his own older brother. After all, Tonio had died from an accidental fall, which was different from what he remembered. In the game, the man beside him had been the killer, finally. "After 50 years, I have killed that vermin. Now I am the rightful heir." Financially, the Palacio Count's estate. He wept dramatically, proclaiming that at last he had slain that foe after decades. Yet in that moment, his expression seemed almost blissful, a twisted stroke of fortune. Alan looked on helplessly, at least trying to mask his own emotions. The mastermind had to be Leo or one of his minions. Alan stared at the body lying in the coffin, thinking to himself that all he needed to do was resolve the 5 great sins. Time then moved forward a year. With the succession issues settled and Leo having consolidated control over the drug trade, the Count's territory had grown noticeably peaceful. Alan and Evan sat facing each other, with Evan quietly eating from his plate as Alan observed. Alan looked down at the pages, thinking to himself. Over time, he and Yusha had become pen pals. Maintaining this correspondence could prove useful for the future. Within the letter, Yusha began recounting their observations. Yuna is excellent at hide and seek. Hidan is skilled at battle games. Deus is growing normally, and he enjoys the chaotic season. Alan read the words with a faint smile, noting that they all seemed like well-behaved children. Below her message was the monthly list of benefactors. Upon seeing it, Alan exclaimed, "The list has grown again." It was fascinating to see so many patrons supporting that small orphanage. Evan added, "Though it is a bit unusual, this is certainly a good thing." "Oh, and about what you have been searching for all this time." Evan continued, "I received a call from the Information Bureau. They have found a lead." Alan, eating as he spoke, perked up. "Really, that is a relief. It must be a list of the third overlord. Finally, I can locate him." At that moment, light from the window flooded the room, brightening everything. The two of them worked in silence, each absorbed in their own tasks. Elsewhere, a blood-curdling scream pierced the air. This was the Margot drug distribution point. Moving forward, two voices spoke calmly, almost casually. "The Palacio family's scum is generous. He always rewards us handsomely." "Yes," replied the other. "Our organization now counts several hundred members." Then, before them, the scene shifted, revealing the bodies of the murdered. They froze at the sight. The victims screamed in terror, "No, my hands won't stop, help!" In a horrifying instant, all of them simultaneously ended their own lives. Nearby, a shadow lingered silently in the darkness. Yusha appeared behind it, her voice smooth and chilling. "I quite enjoyed today's puppet show. Seems there is still much to report." Upon seeing her, Deus turned to ask, "Does doing this even matter?" Yusha glanced at him, her tone teasing yet sharp. "Why do you pity them?" "No," Deus replied. "They used others to manufacture drugs. I just do not know if this relates to my own hatred." "Of course it is useful," Yusha countered, a wicked grin curling her lips. "We are preparing the space for his return." Her smile grew more sinister. How could we possibly let this place look shabby when he arrives? Deus, expressionless, simply said, understood. Without another word, the two of them unleashed their magic. Whirling winds rose around them, and in the blink of an eye, they vanished, ghost-like, floating through the night, ensuring events unfolded exactly as he wished. Then, a brilliant flash illuminated the night sky. Beneath the serene crescent moon, Yusha's voice rang out, "We, the azure moon, shall be your sword." The place was deserted now, leaving only a deep crater in the earth. 2 years had passed since Yusha and Alan had become pen-pal friends, and Evan dragged his exhausted body across the ground. "Where are you, sir?" he muttered, collapsing onto the grass. "I am back." So the young master was in the backyard. That figured. "Oh heavens, Evan, you startled me," Alan said casually, gesturing him over. "The 5th child has been safely delivered to the orphanage." Evan froze in disbelief. By this time, the remaining 3 sins had already been rescued as well. Alan handed him some food. "Here, eat." "Yes, thank you, sir." While passing the meal to Evan, Alan's thoughts drifted back to the search for the 3rd child. The sin of greed had been troublesome, but with his gamer instincts and after squeezing Evan's labor down to the bone, everything had turned out fine in the end. After Evan finished eating, Alan said, "You did well running all over the place. You can rest for a while." "The orphanage mission is over?" Evan asked. "Yep. It is done. Thank goodness." Evan lay on his back with a long sigh. "But young master, you do not seem happy. Are you sure?" "You think so?" Alan pointed to his mouth. "Look, I am smiling." He forced the stiffest, most mechanical smile imaginable. "Just take it as is." Sunlight spilled over the grass as Alan stretched, breathing deeply. Things were progressing better than he had anticipated. Everything was going smoothly. All the contracted spirit masters had become the 5 great sins due to past tragedies. Though these tragedies were embedded in their backstories long before their awakenings, saving every one of them perfectly before those events unfolded had been nearly impossible. Saving them afterward would have been even more dangerous. "How's the orphanage doing?" Alan asked. Evan handed him a letter. "Same as usual. Everything is running smoothly. The children who used to look like broken dolls. You said they are looking brighter now." Alan opened the envelope. "Really? Then we won't need any more caretakers." He had not expected Yusha to handle things this well. Maybe it was because her character was deeply tied to the Moon Orphanage. She definitely hated outside interference. "Seen this way," Alan said, calling Evan closer, "Yusha really is just a good kid." "So anything special in the letter?" Inside, Yusha had written, "Everyone is well. Some of the children here are growing into very beautiful boys and girls. You truly do not need to worry about the supplies anymore, nor about the new children you have sent." When Alan finished reading, he felt genuinely relieved. It was wonderful to see them all being raised properly. He even found himself thinking about how all 5 sins were growing up normally now. Environment truly mattered. "So when do you plan to meet the children?" Evan asked. "You always say you will make time for it." Alan hesitated. "About that." Outwardly, he acted unsure, but inwardly he had no intention of meeting them directly. Getting closer to them would help in many ways, but the process of becoming a sin was horrific, and their personalities as seen in the game's flashbacks had been terrifying even in childhood. He thought it through carefully. Yes, saving them before their awakenings should help, but they were still frightening. "Maybe next year," Alan finally said. "I understand." He let out a breath of relief. Anyway, in this grim and dark fantasy world, what you need most is some self-defense. Magic requires talent, and I happen to have it. Evan spoke up. "But young master, have you ever heard of the Blue Moon?" Alan answered honestly, "No. Never heard of them." Evan explained, "They are an organization that has grown pretty famous lately, one that hunts down criminal groups." Hearing that, Alan raised a brow. "So they are basically taking out the trash. Sounds like a good thing." But deep inside, he suspected this was not part of the original story he knew. With deviations like this, he figured the group would probably disappear before long. Evan's voice grew stern. "But right now, they have started killing nobles too. That is why I thought you would have heard about them." The young master called out, "Evan. From today on, you will sleep in the room next to mine. It is getting late. Moonlight spread across the entire mansion. Voices echoed through one of the quiet rooms. Well then, shall we go over this week's activity report on MANHWA? Yusha nodded and spoke softly. From the Northern Division, Solong cheerfully reported that everything had been taken care of. He sounded almost proud. Heads of the slave traders. All of them. He hopped around excitedly. See that, they did not even know who I was. I really liked the outfit I had tailored. I told them that if they could guess my eye color, I would spare them, but none of them could. Ryan also added that all the corpses had been buried neatly. Sitting on the staircase, Rodmal chimed in as well. The southern side's done too. He went on, those illegal human experiment labs and that troublesome Avalon bunch, everything was torn apart without leaving a trace. Yusha let out a twisted, eerie smile. Good. Everything is going exactly as he desires. She continued, we exist for the glory of the Great Moon. All of them belong to the secret organization MANHWA, a group devoted to worshipping the Great Moon. However, a new problem had surfaced. Yusha frowned. Under his command, everything should have been perfect. Why is there an issue at all? Rodmal explained that the leader of Avalon was actually the eldest son of a count. During the Southern Purge, a dangerous document had been uncovered. It seemed the count's eldest son had been plotting against his own father. Yusha was surprised, though she did not show much on her face. What? An eerie power radiated from her entire body. So it is true. Even those standing nearby were frightened by the pressure she emitted. She lifted the document in her hand. After the count becomes frail and ill, he intends to quietly eliminate him with poison. Furiously, she crushed the paper in her fist. Unbelievable. And yet you were right. 2 years later, just as predicted, Count Palacio passed away. The official cause of death was listed as cardiac arrest, but judging by the circumstances, drug abuse leading to his demise, it was far too obvious. A voice somewhere murmured, what, MANHWA again? Alon listened in silence. Yes. They assassinated him in the middle of the night, yet another nighttime killing. Seeing the situation, Alon thought that the nobles were finally becoming cautious of MANHWA. In addition, the count's funeral ended in utter silence. Not a single person mourned him. The ceremony ended quickly, without a shred of warmth. Everyone left coldly. Evan finally asked, young master, what should we do? The eldest son, he will inherit the title next year, right, and what is with all this luggage? Alon was packing. You are packing too. We are leaving, he said matter-of-factly. Evan blinked. Leaving? You are going to leave the estate? Not exactly, Alon replied. We are heading south. After they finished packing, Evan asked again, south, do you mean Rodmal? Yes, Alon answered. He planned to move to a small village in the southern region of Palacio territory, Rodmal. Someone was already watching him from the upper floor. Leo had observed everything from beginning to end without saying a word. Later, the smell of fried eggs and warm bread filled the kitchen. Someone cheerfully cooked on a pan, enjoying it so much that it made Alan's stomach growl. But their peaceful life lasted only briefly. After 3 days, they were back at the count's mansion. Alon clutched his head in frustration. What now? Another funeral, this time for the eldest son. His voice sagged with exhaustion. I can't believe it. We are back in this blood-soaked place again. But the signs of death this time. They are completely different. How did he die so quickly? He stared at Leo's body inside the coffin. The cause of death was obvious, a sword thrust straight through the heart. Alan's mind raced. Who could have done it? Who killed Leo? He turned to ask about the cause of death, but the moment he spoke, the nearby guards jolted in terror. They flinched violently, their faces pale. We apologize for looking at you, my lord. Alon froze for a second. What was wrong with them? Why were they suddenly reacting like that? Without another word, he walked past the anxious group. Evan hurried after him. Young master, he called. Alon lowered his voice. Evan, did you find anything? Yes, Evan answered quietly. About that. Young master, could it be? He leaned in, whispering, were you the one who wiped out Avalon in a single night? Alon turned sharply. The servants nearby were passing through the hallway. but all he could see on their faces was confusion and a hint of fear. A few days earlier, on the way to Rodmel, Evan had spoken up. "By the way, young master, if you are going to leave anyway, would not choosing a proper city be better?" Alon thought to himself, absolutely not. Rodmel is the final destination in my plan. He had already saved the 5 great sins from their tragic origins and prevented the world's destruction. Rodmel had no connection to the original storyline, and there was a palatial estate there as well. It was the perfect place to live comfortably, as a noble, a place where he could enjoy a peaceful, indulgent life. Alon answered slowly, "There is a reason for everything." Evan immediately pushed back. "I am not falling for that again. You always dodge the question like this when something actually bothers you." Alon clicked his tongue at Evan's exasperated tone. "Fine, think whatever you want." The carriage rolled out of the Count's estate. Leo watched from above, debating whether he should kill Alon now or not. After all, whether Alon stayed or left, he was useless to Leo's plans. He had even considered poisoning Alon after their father died. But since Alon was quietly heading toward the border, Leo decided there was no longer reason to eliminate him. Still, the recent failures of Avalon weighed heavily on his mind. He gripped the balcony railing tightly, irritation simmering beneath the surface. Finally, he called for his servant Alman to follow the carriage. Alman, Leo's right-hand man, asked, "So you want me to kill him?" Leo's eyes widened. What? Was Alman questioning his orders? He had never complained before. Why now? Leo's expression darkened. "Your job is to obey me." The moment those words left his lips, a sword pierced straight into his chest. Leo gasped. "Why you? How dare you betray me?" But the one holding the sword was no loyal servant. It was Hedan, a member of the secret order MANHWA. "I have enjoyed watching Avalon's little civil war," he said coldly. "But I am not Alman. I am a blade forged by the Crimson Moon. MANHWA acts according to the will of our great moon. And if anyone dares to harm it..." He drove the sword in deeper before pulling it out with a clean, practiced motion. "We are permitted to act freely." Blood splattered across the marble floor as Leo collapsed. Hedan watched him fall with a calm, almost bored expression. "That is why I waited for you to say those words. Hard to believe it took 2 whole years." Leo hissed weakly, "My people won't let you escape. With what you have done, Avalon will vanish from the continent forever." Hedan shook his head with feigned disappointment. "A shame. The great moon gave you a chance." Then he vaulted over the balcony railing and disappeared into the dawn. Morning light crept across the horizon. The sun rose, marking the start of another peaceful day. For Rodmel, it truly was paradise. Alon woke up cheerfully. "Good morning." He stretched lazily, enjoying the sight of another quiet, tranquil day. He ate when he wanted, ate whatever he wanted, and finally lived the life of a proper noble. As he munched on bread, he even thought he might start a bakery business for fun. Evan entered carrying a letter. "Young master, a letter has arrived." Alon took it, puzzled. "What is this?" The bread slipped from his hand as he read. The letter stated that after Leo's death, Count Palacio required him to return at once. And so, his paradise ended in just 3 days. He soon found himself standing gloomily at his brother's funeral, back at the mansion yet again. As he stared at the terrified crowd, he wondered why everyone was reacting so strangely. Evan finally asked, "Young master, since when did you become the mastermind behind wiping out Avalon?" Alon blinked in confusion. In other words, he was trapped inside a non-stop chain of bizarre misunderstandings. Curling up in the corner, he could only despair. "Hey, Evan. Can you explain it to me in a way I can actually understand? How did I become the mastermind?" Evan answered calmly. "Because you were the only one left alive after it all happened. Leo was killed right after we left the mansion. That gives you a perfect alibi and conveniently makes you the heir." Alon froze after hearing Evan's explanation. The realization hit him hard. Evan went on, "Avalon has vanished completely. There is no one left to cause trouble over Leo's death." His tone suddenly brightened as he added, almost cheerfully, "So you have become the mastermind, complete with a master-level assassin working under your command. Is not that great? By the way, what is with that outfit?" Alon pressed his fingers to his temple, thinking carefully. When the hell did this even start? There is no organization in this world that can erase an underground giant that quickly. He looked at Evan. Wait. Did not you tell me there was a group that hunts other organizations? You mean MANHWA? Evan asked. That is, right. Do you think it was them? Evan shook his head. The Intel network claims it was not. They said MANHWA never leaves bodies behind, only their symbol. But the members of Avalon were killed by sword. The whole place looked like a slaughterhouse. That is why they think you are the mastermind with a sword-wielding expert under your command. Alon suddenly realized, right. MANHWA never appeared in the original game, and there is no way some weak early ARC group is strong enough to wipe out a major organization before the main storyline even begins. So who the hell did this? Meanwhile, on the other side, Yusha was already interrogating her team. Did any of you leave traces? Ryan immediately answered, we left nothing. Solong chimed in, me neither. Same here. He laughed with twisted pride. The only thing left there were corpses. Just then, the doors opened and a familiar voice rang out. We are here. The Rodmal division had arrived, all of them calm and composed. The remaining forces of Avalon 486 members had been dealt with. Rodmal reported with a grin that matched exactly what their leader expected. We cut them in half. Yusha's eyes glimmered with satisfaction. Good. Perfect. And just like that, Avalon, a massive organization that once dominated the kingdom of Asteria, was reduced to ashes in only 5 days. But Rodmal stepped forward again. However, it seems the cleanup is not finished. What do you mean? Yusha asked. He raised a stack of documents. I found more nobles connected to Avalon. The Asterian principality appears to be deeply involved. The room fell silent. Yusha opened the folder, her expression darkening like a storm cloud. The pressure she emitted was enough to make even her own people tense. You already know what I am going to say, do not you? Everyone understood without needing further explanation. Not a single person replied. Rodmal spoke up calmly, almost casually. Let us eliminate them quietly. Yusha let out a long breath, then turned to Ryan. So the Information Guild has cleared everything up, right? Ryan lifted the sheet of paper in her hand and replied, yes. They have concluded this matter has nothing to do with Blue Moon. Standing beside her, Deus added, the guilds came to the same conclusion. They are calling it a hellscape carved out by a swordsman. Hearing that, she asked, we are still monitoring the situation. Correct. Yusha gave a faint smile. Keep going. This issue must never involve that person. I have said it countless times already, so everyone understands, right? Papers floated up around her, suspended mid-air at her command as she continued. But since that person's own bloodline dared to target him first, this incident is not a matter of orders. Remembering his face, she spoke softly, we are a sword. The moment the words left her mouth, Yusha grew visibly excited, covering part of her face. A sword is not allowed to think for itself. Right. Her eyes glimmered with a red light as she turned toward the window. Blue Moon must act according to orders. Remember, he knows everything. The 4 people nearby stiffened, watching her silently. Her voice was filled with unwavering resolve. Never disappoint that person. Deus glanced at Yusha, confused. How could someone as overwhelmingly capable as she was be anxious, restless just because she might be discovered? Then he raised the bundle of documents in his hand. I understand now. It is all for the Great Moon. All because of him. Meanwhile, at the Count's estate, the lights inside the manor still burned through the night. Alon sat at his desk, exhausted beyond belief. I can't do this anymore, he groaned. When he lifted his head, tears were already streaming down his face. Ever since the funeral, he had been unbearably busy for an entire month. I just want to relax and live off money, he muttered. Is not that what nobles do? Looking down at the documents piled before him, he sighed. Even though he had created plenty of grudges, Leo's death was originally meant to happen 6 years later. His brother's death had shifted the game's timeline, and now every responsibility of the family had fallen onto him. Just as that thought crossed his mind, a voice called out from beyond the door. Little Count, several elderly retainers entered. Each one carried stacks of objects, books, scrolls, armloads of paperwork. Seeing the mountain of work approaching, Alon only sighed deeper. The dark circles under his eyes were now unmistakable. Why were they working so hard now of all times? When the previous count was alive, they took their sweet time, cutting corners whenever they could. From afar, the old men noticed his gloomy expression and froze in terror. Is he angry? I should work even harder, I do not want to die. And just like that, while Alan's complexion grew paler from overwork, the vassals became increasingly diligent, no doubt driven by the rumors painting him as the mastermind behind the massacre. I called for you. Why did not you come? He snapped. At this point, Alon was nothing more than a corporate slave running a small office, working in silence from dawn till night. In his heart, he wished desperately that they would simply handle everything themselves. Scene shift. Flames flared, and the meat slowly roasted over the fire. Evan addressed him. He sounded puzzled as he lifted his head. I have to say, I am honestly shocked. Alon was manipulating mana, letting it swirl and glide around the room with casual ease. Evan continued, to reach rank 2 after only 2 years of self-study, your talent is extraordinary. When did you start developing this fast? He added. Normally it takes around 4 years to reach rank 2, and magic can't even be used properly unless someone is born with a special blessing. Alon replied calmly, maybe I am naturally gifted. I was worried, so I trained hard for self-defense. Internally, he thought to himself that this technique required precise mana control as well. He kept the magic circling restlessly around him, though the truth was that it still was not complete. His expression was one of weary frustration. He had never imagined he would actually end up using magic in a fantasy world. Controlling the swirling mana, he muttered. At first, I was excited. Once my plan was finished, the danger would disappear, so I figured I could slow down. Just take my time. Right then, the orb of magic rose into the air, only to flicker. Lately, survival had become a very real concern. He had come to accept a painful truth. His eyes stung with frustration as he admitted it to himself. His mana pool was absurdly small. Nothing works, Alon sighed. The memories of what he had read came flooding back. A person's mana pool was like the physique of an athlete fixed from birth. And his own was tiny. Thinking about it hurt more than he expected. He had come to accept that no amount of training would change it. As he ate, he mulled over the issue. If every other solution failed, there was still one option left. Just then, Evan picked up a letter and said, "Ah, right. A ballroom invitation has arrived for you, young master." Alon turned toward him at the mention of a ball. And just like that, the night of the event arrived. He stood before the grandiose mansion where the gathering would be held. Nobles filled the hall in elegant attire. Wearing the formal garments of a count, Alon entered with Evan at his side. He exhaled the moment his foot crossed the threshold. Great. I am already tired. It was a standard southern Asterian noble ball, an opportunity for networking and building connections. Since he would soon succeed the title of count, it was probably wise to seize this chance and form a few beneficial relationships. Alon adjusted the cloth at his collar and stepped deeper into the hall. Behind him, Evan was already stuffing food into his mouth as he asked, muffled, "What exactly are you doing, sir?" Alon thought to himself that befriending nobles was essential for the peaceful life he wanted. But the moment he approached a group, everyone recoiled at the mere sight of him, scrambling out of his way. When he reached out to shake hands with one man, the poor fellow panicked instantly before the entire group fled as if chased by ghosts. Next to him, Evan could not help laughing as he tried to comfort him. Do not take it too hard. Haha. Really, do not be upset. Alon watched them scatter and thought, upset, not really. I expected this. He simply said, Evan, I am heading home. He knew perfectly well why they avoided him. His reputation was in shambles. He was nothing like the former glory of the old days. The Palacio of today was the black sheep of the East. Still, he had not come here without a plan. Lifting a glass of red wine, Alon decided he would handle this with his secretly practiced social skills. He spoke aloud. The flavor of this wine is quite distinctive. A young woman nearby turned her head toward him and froze. His presence alone seemed terrifying. Then he added, with an unintentionally deep, ominous tone, especially the aroma. It is rather unique. Alon smiled gently, or at least, what he believed was a gentle smile. On his face, however, it resembled something far more sinister. I would like to have a few bottles at home. To him, it was polite conversation, a friendly smile necessary for socializing. To her, it was the devil whispering in her ear. The young noblewoman went pale, trembling uncontrollably, before blurting out, "I will speak with my father and arrange everything right away." Then she bolted, terrified. Alon blinked after her, dumbfounded. "Wait, no, that is not what I meant." He muttered inwardly, "That is not what I meant at all." Behind him, whispers began to ripple through the crowd. He threatened her for a limited edition bottle, did not he? Worse than his brothers. An even bigger thug. Evan tried to stifle his laughter, giving Alon a sympathetic pat on the shoulder. Meanwhile, Alon desperately clung to denial. She was probably just shy. They finally left the ball, and Evan remarked, "Your spoils of war have increased again." He said it cheerfully while munching on a snack. "It is an impressive list, honestly." Beside him, Alon looked utterly defeated. "I was just trying to learn about wine," he muttered. Evan began reciting the gifts he had acquired. A fine Paldian stallion, Fenian orange tea, refined Violanda metalwork, Malentino specialty wine. It really was a stunning list. Meanwhile, the protagonist himself was spiraling deeper into despair. It turned out the name Palacio was infamous in ways he had not fully understood. Rumors said he had murdered his own delinquent brothers. Whether he liked it or not, he had become someone everyone instinctively avoided. Goodbye socializing. Was it just his imagination, or had he truly grown distant from the world? Exhausted, he sighed, "I am going to get some air." Evan remained behind. "Yes, sir." Not far away, a red-haired girl silently observed him. She studied him with a thoughtful expression before slipping outside to lean against the balcony railing, watching the scenery. Alon stared into the night, troubled. When did everything start going wrong? What exactly was the mistake? Just then, a voice spoke up behind him. "Excuse me, may I speak with you for a moment?" Alon stiffened. "Someone's speaking to me." "Who?" He spun around but saw no one. Another voice floated upward from below. Startled, he looked down, and a petite girl appeared before him. She curtsied lightly. "Loria, third daughter of Duke Ultia." The moment he heard the name, he thought grimly, "Ultia. Of course." "Hello," Alon replied politely. The Ultia family was one of the three great villain houses of the spirit arts world, the black sheep of the north. In his mind, Alon sighed. "Anyone who willingly talks to me cannot be normal." He studied the small girl. "Why do not I remember her? She was not in the game." "Was she?" Suddenly Loria spoke, her tone surprisingly steady. "I will be direct. Please lend me your strength." Alan's expression darkened immediately, becoming cold and ominous in the moonlight. Loria grew flustered but forced herself to continue. "I am going to be assassinated soon." Her voice drifted gently across the night, chilling him to the bone. Loria's face tightened with fear as she looked up at him. Hearing her words, Alon could not help thinking of how he had been cherished by his father, protected like an unofficial, secret child. But the Duke of Ultia was now gravely ill. Loria's voice trembled as she continued, "My half-sisters. They are planning to kill me." So it all comes down to a fight for survival, Alon thought. No wonder he did not remember her from the game. She had already been dead by the time the story began. With desperate urgency, Loria pleaded, "If it is your strength, Lord Alon. Please." But he answered simply, "I refuse." She tried again, her voice shaking. "I am not asking for help for free. If you protect me, I will give you half the Ultia family." But he was already turning away. "I will take my leave." Inwardly, he sighed. She was pitiful, yes, but just keeping himself alive was already more than enough trouble. Taking on someone else's life and death struggle, impossible. He did not possess any special power, no matter what the rumors claimed. Still, Alon glanced back at the lonely young girl standing by herself. Her expression was quietly devastated. He rubbed the back of his neck and let out a long breath. "I hope something good happens for her. I hope she finds an ally somewhere." Then he headed back into the ballroom. Not far away, two figures in black cloaks were whispering to each other. So Ultia has already made contact with the Great Moon. I suppose I should tell the Scarlet Moon that fortune is approaching their chosen one. The woman beside him replied, no, do not bother. If the intel is correct, she is the only member of the Ultia household with no ties to Avalon. From above, they watched Loria with sharp eyes. If she was uninvolved with Avalon, then she was not one of Rodmal's targets. That is good, the man said coolly as he turned away. All the other Ultias will be dealt with eventually. Indeed. Under the Scarlet Moon's orders, we are focusing on severing the flow of information so the Avalon incident never reaches him. While they monitored the girl, their attention drifted back down to Alon inside the hall. At that moment, he was sighing heavily, feeling strangely hollow. It was as if the ballroom itself was wrapped in some invisible barrier keeping everyone away from him. He did not notice the mysterious figure standing nearby. Hello, the girl said softly. Just hearing someone speak to him made Alon emotional. Was that directed at me? Really, am I finally going to make a noble acquaintance? He quickly turned around. Yes, hello. The girl lifted her fan slightly, smiling behind it. The moment he saw that elegant, veiled smile, he felt a chill. Again, another shady one. He recognized her face instantly. Anyone who approaches me first is never a normal noble. Once he realized who she was, he stepped forward politely. Good evening, Lady Zenonia. The girl Kalia blinked, surprised. Oh my, you know who I am. Of course, Alon said calmly. You are very well known. There were 3 infamous villain families in the kingdom of Asteria. To the north, the Ultias. To the east, the Palatios. And to the west, the degenerate Zenonia clan. She reminded him of a regal serpent, graceful, but undeniably dangerous. Kalia chuckled softly. Well known, me. She was the eldest daughter of Count Zenonia. If the Palacio family was a criminal gang, then the Zenonia clan was the refined, corporate, fully legalized mafia version. The thought alone made him shiver. He only needed a few noble connections to secure a peaceful life. That was it. Nothing more. Nothing dangerous. Even if half his lifeline was already hanging by a thread, he absolutely could not afford to get involved with people like her. He forced a light smile. It is because you are very beautiful. Thank you for the compliment, she replied with another graceful smile. I do hope we can talk more. What do you think? Alon remained composed. I would like that too. But too many eyes are watching us already. Alon silently prayed to himself. Please, just let me go quietly. Kalia looked at him and said something cryptic, just as the rumors say. Then she turned away, adding, I hope we meet again soon. Alon blinked in confusion. Before he could react further, Kalia had already walked off in another direction. He watched her leave, dumbfounded. What the hell just happened? From above, 2 figures observing the scene spoke quietly. The Avalon incident has been completely contained, one of them added. However, a new lead has appeared. Their eyes fixed on a window where someone was hiding in a tree, silently tracking him. A tail, one murmured. 2 small figures darted off swiftly. There is no direct order yet, so we will just observe. If necessary, we can intervene. Meanwhile, Evan scratched his head in confusion. Master, are you sure this is real this time? They stood before a narrow mountain gorge. And Evan glanced around skeptically. This is the place we have been searching for all this time, he continued. Even in broad daylight, it is unusually dark inside. Alan's face lit with determination as he clenched his fists. Finally. We have found it. This had to be the real target, he thought. The environmental effects matched perfectly, confirming that this was indeed the spot. Evan groaned. If this turns out to be a fake again, I am going to lose it. They stepped inside cautiously, scanning their surroundings. Strange runes covered the stones, and Alon nodded. This time, it is the real deal. In the game, it was much easier to find. In truth, the reason he had come all this way under the pretense of a scouting mission was because of the Southern Labyrinth. Known as the Whispering Maze, solving all the puzzles across its 8 chambers promised a valuable holy artifact as a reward. Alon smiled faintly as he looked ahead. I still remember all the instructions. And that exhilarating feeling of grinding for loot. Ahead of them stood a massive gate inscribed with strange characters. Alon gazed up at it in awe. Seeing the entrance to the maze in real life. Even though I grew tired of it in the game, standing here now feels completely different. Evan's eyes widened. This gorge. It looks like it was handcrafted by humans. How do you know places like this? Alon lifted his chin and replied casually, I have been here many times. Evan's brow furrowed in confusion. You have been here many times, he asked, startled, as his mind swirled with wonder. Alon smirked lightly. Just kidding. I have my own ways. Let us go. Seeing that grim expression, Evan could not help but shout, please, do not say things like that with such a serious face. As soon as they stepped inside, a monstrous roar echoed from above. Its massive hands clenched together, producing a terrifying sound that resonated through the cavern. Evan looked around in awe. It feels like if you make a single wrong move here, you will be crushed instantly. Alon, however, remained silent, evaluating calmly. The horrifying sounds continued relentlessly. Evan froze, watching Alon write strange symbols on a stone tablet with a calm, unreadable expression. How can he stay so composed, Evan thought, staring at him as he inscribed the cryptic lines. Even in a situation like this, Alon seemed completely unshaken. Memories of the past 4 years together flashed through Evan's mind. He still could not fully understand him. No two missions they had undertaken were ever the same, repaying a debt for someone, rescuing an orphaned child, annihilating a demonic organization, delivering a meaningless letter. Each task was entirely unique. At that moment, the monster above showed no signs of stopping, and Evan could not fathom how Alon knew so much about this place, having never left the mansion. Calmly, Alon pointed toward the creature. The puzzle sequence is correct, but it has not unlocked yet. We have to wait until that thing finishes first. The terrifying sounds continued unabated, echoing through the labyrinth. Evan continued to think to himself. Yet, following this mysterious young master always seemed to lead to something good. The two of them looked ahead, and Alon said calmly, "Ah, it is opening." Evan's heart skipped a beat. What is he planning this time, young master? Deep down, he muttered nervously, finally, the door's opening. Oh God, I feel like I am going to be sick. I knew this place was tough, but I did not expect it to be this brutal. I almost broke my neck trying not to look, he whispered to himself. Before them now lay a massive pile of gleaming treasures, illuminating the entire chamber. Evan could not hide his excitement. Finally. It is done, is not it? Alon replied without emotion, yes. Take the black ring and let us go. At a distance, 6 rings were mounted on a fake hand. Evan stared at them, unimpressed. They look completely useless. Alon picked up the black ring, examining it carefully. It is a bit large, but touching anything else will just bring trouble. Better to leave them be. He silently stared at the ring, thinking, finally. The restraining ring is mine. Then he added, do not worry. The way back is safe. Evan stammered in response, why yes. As they moved, Alon felt a sense of ease. Thanks to remembering the game's instructions, this task had been surprisingly simple. But Evan's face betrayed his worry. Young master, did you anticipate all of this? He asked nervously. Ahead, towering golems blocked their path. Turns out the stone walls in that gorge had been living constructs all along. Evan's mind raced, calculating every possible move. Unknown enemies. This is incredible. At least there has to be a way to get him out safely. Alon strode forward, declaring, this time, I will handle it. Evan froze, astonished, as the monstrous creatures all turned toward them simultaneously. Whatever you are planning, the top priority is getting out safely, he reminded urgently. A golem lunged forward. Wait, second-tier magic won't be enough. In that moment, Alon whispered, binding, activate. The black ring on his hand flared with a dark light. The golems shuddered, their forms flickering as the light spread across them. Then a voice echoed from the void above. The fragment inherits the great will of MANHWA. Speak the 2 limits you can develop. Alon stood alone in the pitch-black space. He glanced around. In the game, this would have triggered a selection window. So that had been the source of the voice. Suddenly, a massive face materialized from the shadows. It was the reward for completing the binding maze. True to its name, it was a holy artifact that absorbed the user's power, but in return came with strict limitations. Alan's body tensed slightly, a shiver running through him. The voice was overwhelming, and it felt as if he truly existed in this world. He spoke aloud the first limit. The voice responded immediately, prompting him further. Alan continued, in all procedures, the hand seals of Babylonia are absolutely mandatory. The voice asked, "What do you wish to gain from this binding?" Alan answered decisively, "The power to bend the world's rules a little further." Streams of energy swirled and merged in the void, pulsating around him. "Granted," the voice intoned. Evan lifted his head, staring into the darkness as light began to emerge. Alan said next, "The second limit." The voice resounded once more, commanding, "Speak." Alan formed another hand seal and continued, "In all procedures, only the sacred words of Babylonia may be used." The voice responded once more, "And what do you wish to gain from this binding?" He answered calmly, "The same as before." For a moment, the voice seemed to fall silent. Alan looked up, puzzled. "Damn it. Did I mess up a step? I even mirrored the skill icon perfectly. Choose both the hand seals and the sacred words as limits to maximize attack power." Sweat trickled down his temple. He had perfected every seal and incantation through countless repetitions, so this time, failure was not an option. Almost immediately, the voice spoke again, its tone resonating faintly through the void. "O mortal who has memorized the seals and divine words of the great forgotten God, we express our gratitude to the one who carries forth his will." Alan frowned in confusion. Carries forth his will, what does that mean? Then, the ring on his hand vanished. He realized it was being absorbed, a sign that the binding had succeeded. The voice spoke one final time. "I have always watched over you. You inherit that will." Back in reality, Evan's voice rang out in alarm. "Young master, second-tier magic." Before them, the towering monsters charged forward. Evan reached out anxiously, feeling powerless. Alan, however, remained composed, his eyes calm and unshaken. He began channeling magic through his hands. The iron sphere should have blazed with radiant light, but it only glimmered faintly, even as he poured all of his mana into it. No matter how much he trained, he could not surpass this inherent limit. It was time, then, to test the power of the binding and the cost it demanded. With that thought in mind, Alan formed a magical sphere in the palm of his hand. Slowly, the orb grew, gathering energy with an almost tangible weight. The monsters continued to charge toward them relentlessly. Alan raised his hand, directing the magical sphere straight forward, ready to confront the imminent onslaught. It was time to test it. Alan immediately brought the magical sphere into play. With a decisive motion, he hurled the orb into the air, invoking the seal's limits and accepting the price it demanded. As the refractive incantation activated, the sphere transformed into a pale, ethereal blue flame, flickering and twisting in the shadowed space. Next came the countershock technique. Bolts of lightning began striking continuously along the veins of the cavern. The sphere grew ever brighter, casting an eerie glow across the dark expanse. Using the Azure Light spell, the orb expanded and spun, unleashing a barrage of electrical arcs that danced outward in all directions. Finally, with the linear diffraction technique, Alan's mastery of his hand movements became evident. Streams of crackling energy shot forth from his palms. The lightning surged directly toward the pursuing monsters. Evan could only stare in disbelief, utterly amazed. The bolts of electricity struck the hunters from every angle, arcs snapping violently through the air. As the lightning faded, the electric currents lingered, leaving the colossal golems paralyzed and motionless. Alan and Evan stood silently atop the cliff, observing the stunned remnants below. After only a few seconds of quiet, another storm of lightning erupted, sweeping across the giants. Limbs and fragments fell apart, scattered across the cavern floor. Flashes of electricity shimmered, then gradually faded. When the dust cleared, Alan and Evan looked down at the scene. What had once been massive golems now lay reduced to shattered rubble. Alan's expression remained utterly impassive, but Evan's face reflected shock and disbelief. He whispered under his breath, "Damn it. This is unreal." Once the electric currents along the cliff had dissipated, the two of them carefully descended. Evan could not stop chattering along the way, asking if Alon had really been hiding his true power all this time. Alon replied lightly, brushing it off, impossible. Evan, stubborn and incredulous, pressed further. I have been 15 years as a mercenary, and I have never seen anything like this. You are telling me that is really just second-tier magic? Alon only gave a brief, dry affirmation, yes. Evan was left speechless, utterly powerless in the face of his young master's cold detachment. Despite the impassive, emotionless mask Alon wore, his mind was a whirlwind of thought. I did not anticipate this. It was not this strong in the game, if I remember correctly. In the turn-based combat system of Psychedelia, spells could be enhanced through seals or incantations each turn. In such a system, every victory in battle increased a character's attack power by 10%. In the battle just now against the stone giants, Alon had used a chain lightning spell, employing 4 seals and 1 incantation. It had been strengthened over 5 turns. As he recalled the fight, Alon found himself unconsciously retracing every spell and motion he had used in that encounter. He had used a total of 4 spells, and the accumulated lightning strikes were amplified simultaneously, forming a configuration perfectly suited for a large-scale lightning assault. In exchange for the limitation that forced him to use both seals and incantations for each spell, he received something else in return. As he pondered, Alon vaguely imagined a voice echoing in his mind, intoning strange words, "O forgotten mortal, who still remembers the seals and mysteries of the great god. I thank you for inheriting his will." Thinking this through, he drew a conclusion for himself. That must be why the spells were amplified many times over. Throughout the walk back outside, Alan's mind remained tangled in thoughts. Yet the power of this second-tier magic had proven overwhelmingly sufficient, far exceeding even his own expectations. He found himself astonished. Evan, trailing behind him, finally exhaled in relief, marveling silently, at last. We are out. Exhausted, he collapsed onto a stone ledge against the cliff, muttering complaints under his breath, remarking that this had been even more taxing than the battle itself. Evan, irritated by Alan's weary demeanor, muttered half in scolding, half in question, who in the world would even think of making a place this horrifying? Alon did not answer, his eyes scanning the surroundings calmly. He drifted back into thought, reflecting on the Whispering Maze, which also had another name. According to information circulating online shared through map uploads and guidebooks, the maze had gained enormous attention in online communities. People kept asking, "What is the Palon maze?" everywhere. It was just Palon, Palon. But what the hell was it? The Whispering Maze, a mid-level grinding area in the game, was said by the director to have an owner. You could grind endlessly if you ignored the rewards, and over time, it had come to be called the Palon Maze. This question lingered in Alan's mind, nagging him incessantly. Unconsciously, he muttered aloud, "Then, from when did it start being called the Palon Maze?" Evan, half hearing him and confused, asked, "Sorry. What did you just say?" Alon did not repeat himself. Instead, he pulled Evan to his feet and deflected, saying, "Let us head east. After 3 weeks of grueling training, there is something I want to do once we get back." Hearing this, Evan could only helplessly groan, "What? You have been working harder than I thought." As he guided Evan away, Alon continued mulling over his observations. Choosing seals aligned with the spell would enhance its power, and selecting the correct incantation would further strengthen its properties. That was how the game mechanics worked. But unlike in the game, where visuals remained static and only attack stats increased each victory, granting a 10% boost to attack power, Alon noticed something different from the previous battle. This time, every seal visibly altered the spell, and each incantation produced distinct effects. Thinking on this, Alon wondered quietly to himself, just now, even though it was only a spell technique, could it be that my control over mana is refined enough to perceive these subtle transformations? Shaking off the tangle of thoughts, Alon finally relaxed, telling himself that once his mana had fully recovered, he would have to test it again. After all, everything had ended well. In the deep, shadowed forest that night, Alon and Evan remained unaware of Rhine, who was cloaked and hidden in the darkness. Only after they had left did she lift her head. Swiftly and silently, she leapt from one cliff to another, making her way into the heart of the maze. When she reached her destination, Rhine paused. Before her stood a massive stone, etched with countless raised, colored inscriptions. She recognized immediately that these were the script of the Alanar Empire. Despite the gravity of the moment, she allowed herself a quiet thought. At last, everything has turned out well. Ryan removed her hood and cloak, revealing herself fully. She traced her fingers over the colored inscriptions, translating the strange lines. They read, "For a friend soon to be left alone, the sword Saint Palaon stood resolute." As she touched the glyphs, vivid images flashed through her mind. The great Palaon had repelled the invasion of the Dark Pretenders and defeated Alakolaka, the devourer of his people's hearts. The radiant emperor, the legendary Palaon, remained etched in the hearts of his subjects, wielding the divine sword to bravely battle the colossal, vicious dragon. The vision shifted, replaying a scene of Rhine herself hovering above, surrounded by flying books. A voice echoed in her mind, constant and omniscient, "I know all, for I was born with a grand mission," as if emanating from an ancient library. Returning to reality, Rhine recalled the moment she had stood on the cliff, watching Elan below. She realized then that yes, Palaon had been the one to create it. She understood that Queen Bloodia was not as recorded in the histories, and something extraordinary had been at play. Images of Queen Bloodia, the great Emperor Palaon, and Elan swirled persistently in Rhine's mind. She could not stop her thoughts from racing. Even the great moon had once called Palaon a friend worthy of reverence. Moreover, the incantations that he whispered did not exist in any record in the ancient library. Recalling Alan's battle with the colossal beings, it was the spells he had used that puzzled her most. She was consumed with curiosity. Who, after all, was this man? When she finally exited the maze, Rhine's demeanor shifted slightly. Bashfully, she murmured to herself, "Everything the Scarlet Moon said was true. I am ashamed for blindly following orders." But just as quickly, her expression returned to its usual icy calm. A question and confirmation rolled into one. "So, he has arrived." Looking up at the figure perched on the tree branch, Rhine asked with curiosity, "Did you manage to get the information?" Deus replied coldly, "No. The man in black is dead." Suddenly, his neck twisted twice in midair, a feat left behind by Elan. Rhine, hearing this, simply said, "I will have to report this so it can be handled appropriately." In the late night darkness, the pale moon hung high above. Through the dense canopy of the forest, two figures shot across the sky and vanished from sight. Meanwhile, at the Zenonia Count's mansion, Kalia sat on the sofa in her room. She took a small sip of tea, her gaze distant, and spoke in a quiet, detached tone. So it was not just a rumor, after all. Lost in thought, Kalia unconsciously recalled Elan, her mind silently reflecting. His eyes, so cold and indifferent, like a bottomless chasm. A hint of irony crept into her mind. Famous, huh? She leaned back against the sofa, answering her own question. Indeed. Count Zenonia is both powerful and renowned. Yet Kalia's sharp gaze darkened, and she muttered a remark under her breath, "But it is strange. For someone who rarely mingles, she is the one everyone deems famous." Rising from the sofa, she walked slowly toward the man sitting at the desk. With a smile, she asked, "Is not it strange, father?" At her voice, the man paused mid-stroke, pen in hand, and turned to look at her. He regarded Kalia seriously as she continued, "Because you are the count, are not you?" Kalia approached her father, a cold smile curling her lips. With a snap of her fingers, the man's eyes, reflecting her image, twitched uncontrollably. Helpless, he slumped forward, his hand loosening around the brush. Kalia, watching this, felt immense satisfaction. A triumphant, arrogant thought ran through her mind. No one would ever suspect that I am the one truly running the family, while father pretends to be a fool. How could they possibly figure it out? She recalled the banquet, when Elan did not realize that the watchers from afar had been arranged by her. Even when he kindly warned her that many eyes were observing, Kalia had inwardly rejoiced. Even the spies I planted seemed to have been spotted. At that moment, a guard rushed in, panicked, calling out, "Miss Kalia." Leaning against the wall with her hands on her hips, Kalia asked, "What is it?" The guard hurriedly replied, "Miss, please return to your room immediately." Following him back, Kalia opened the door to find the spy sprawled against the wall, bloodied and lifeless. The guard carefully reported, "It seems the seal has not activated yet, which means he did not reveal any secrets." Kalia's expression grew stern. "He deliberately placed it in my room." She paused mid-sentence, leaving her thought unfinished. A few seconds later, she laughed bitterly, questioning herself, how could they have discovered this? From the very first meeting, I was hit right at my greatest weakness. Was not I? Kalia's smile was twisted, tinged with anger, her face contorted into a scowl. Meanwhile, Evan and Alon were dozing in the carriage on their way back. Evan's snores were so loud that Alon stirred, groggily nudging his ears before drifting half asleep again. The scene shifted elsewhere, to the Ultia Duke family's territory at night. Loria sat in a carriage, her heart pounding with fear. It was clear this was no ordinary person. She recalled the patron of the underworld, whose cold eyes mirrored her father's. People like that were absolute forces, ones you could never confront. A heavy sadness filled Loria as she thought of Alon, turning away so indifferently. He was my last lifeline. Disappointment weighed on her, yet she doubted he would ever accept such a risky, losing deal. At that moment, her thoughts drifted to her siblings stripped of all assets and power by the most cowardly of her brothers. The Tamalian eldest son, Malian eldest daughter, the youngest daughter Pyrene, and the youngest son Kig. Looking at herself, she silently lamented, "I have nothing left." Before her stood a grand building, both familiar and alien. "Until now, I survived by exploiting my father's love and pity. What am I to do now?" Reluctantly, she stepped into the cold, imposing structure. Suddenly, a loud voice called out, "Miss Loria, the youngest lady has returned." Two maids came running from afar, panic written all over their faces. Miss Pyrene and young Master Kig. They have been killed." Loria's face drained of color. What? Images of the two flashed in her mind, people willing to stab even their own family. "Alone, that is impossible." She asked quietly, then, "What about Master Tamalian and Miss Malian?" Immediately, a horrified scream echoed from within. The servants rushed toward the sound, all in panic. Inside, the two were engaged in a fierce struggle, swords clashing. Master Tamalian and Miss Malian locked in combat. The scene descended into chaos. Loria stood frozen, bewildered, wondering what was happening. Unbeknownst to them, a small shadow moved swiftly atop the building, vanishing as fast as lightning. Raiden's cold smile marked the completion of his task. The figure leapt away without leaving a trace. The servants scattered in utter panic. Loria muttered under her breath, "Finally." Fear gripped her face as she recalled Alan's cryptic words. He had looked back and said something puzzling, "Everything will turn out fine." Alan's expression at that moment was terrifying. A predator lying in wait, hiding his claws to seize his position, the true puppet master behind the Duke family's affairs. Loria trembled with fear at the thought. So that is it. Just like him. In a single night, I have become the sole heir of the ducal house. After a moment, she let out a quiet breath. She silently wondered how irrationally binding her contract with that demon might have been, yet she knew there was no turning back. Immediately, she turned and walked on. If I betray him, what would happen? There have already been too many precedents. At that moment, she made a firm decision. I have no choice but to continue down the path I have chosen. Time shifted to 2 months later, in Alan's mansion. A man approached with respect, announcing, "I have come by order of Duke Ultia." Alon blinked in surprise. Duke Ultia. Evan, standing nearby, leaned forward, eyes wide. Inside, they saw a bottle of wine, clearly rare Cernance wine, reputedly worth thousands of gold per bottle. Seeing it in person was astonishing. Alongside it was a letter. Alan's surprise deepened as he read, "To Loria Ultia." Not the Duke, but Loria, the youngest daughter. She actually prepared this. Why send it to me, while I am running and struggling to survive? He looked up at the man. Was this really sent to me? The man bowed. Yes, it was personally prepared by the Duke, and I was ordered to deliver it directly to you. Alon was suddenly struck. The Duke, personally. Wait. That means Loria, the youngest. Even he had not anticipated it. She had already become Duke Ultia herself, now focused on the paperwork before her. After a moment, Loria stretched and spoke. 2 months have flown by so quickly. She could not help but recall, after her father's funeral he had passed away from illness. I conducted the succession ceremony and became the Duke. Standing, she sighed. At first, I could not even enter this office. She could never forget that terrifying night. Even with her siblings' sudden deaths, she had avoided all suspicion. At that time, Loria had remained anxious, relying on her alibi of the masquerade ball. Even her secret organization had been targeted by her siblings, so when she returned to the mansion, that day should have been the most dangerous day of her life. I truly had lost all power. Loria's heart raced in fear and confusion as she realized, too late, that someone had taken advantage of the entire situation. He used everything against me. She quietly imagined the scene in her mind. Outwardly, he had rejected her coldly, yet he had handled everything perfectly behind the scenes. Recalling it, Loria still felt a twinge of confusion. How far ahead must he have been thinking? I did not even report the funeral, afraid of disturbing anyone. She walked alone through the magnificent mansion, clearly aware that he needed Ultia for some plan, which was why he had come to her. As she moved, she thought to herself, even though I have consolidated all the organizations under Ultia's banner, it still does not compare to the strength he is hiding. In her mind, she made a quiet deduction. That means he wants something else from me. Alan's image flashed before her eyes. Palacio, a kingpin of the underworld, who had built his empire solely through business. If it was something he did not have but I did. He seemed even darker in her eyes now, manipulating the political arena from the shadows, his reputation, Ultia's affairs. Then Loria looked up at the painting on the wall. For now, I have to focus on the tasks at hand. She turned to stand before the Duke's portrait, thinking, my benefactor will contact me soon. A faint smile touched her lips. I hope the thank you gift pleased him. On the other side, the man bowed and left the Duke's office. I take my leave now. Alan remained puzzled. Loria had once been threatened with death, yet now she had become the Duke, and now this. Something about it seemed off. Evan beside him tilted his head curiously, sensing the strangeness of the situation. Time shifted to a few months later. In winter, 5 years before the rules began. Alan was walking when someone called out, "Young Master." Evan ran over, inquiring, "Young Master no, now you are a count, right?" Alan replied, "Not yet at the succession ceremony, but the new year has arrived, so I can use the title." Inside, Alan felt a wave of indifference. His grand life plan had never included becoming a count. The wonderful rules of Sacedel. Conquer Rodamil, avoid succession struggles, travel freely. None of that involved this. Yet he did not dwell on it. This was now familiar, and he could enjoy the full benefits of nobility. Warabel was even better than he had expected. Evan handed him a letter. "This is from Yusha." As he entered his room, Alan asked, "By the way, any information on the Leo assassins yet?" Evan responded, "Nothing clear yet. The Intelligence Bureau is investigating thoroughly. We will have to wait and see." They then sat at the table, and Evan spoke up, "So, what is your goal, sir? Surely it is not revenge." He silently pondered, "Perhaps the things gradually changing from the game are the butterfly effects caused by me." Alan spoke, "It is just to be prepared for any unexpected situations." Evan suddenly burst out laughing in admiration. "Just now, sir, you really looked like a proper count." Alan sighed. "Let us just say so." Alan then turned his gaze to the letter, curiosity flickering. "I wonder what it contains this time." The contents of the letter appeared. "Sir, how are you? We are all well as usual. Everyone is deeply engrossed in their hobbies. Especially Deuce the puppet play has now reached a truly impressive level. The others were equally cheerful. Cioline is still completely absorbed in gaming with friends." Then it mentioned the other members. Ryan has quietly been reading books but frequently produces new creations. Raiden has taken a keen interest in landscaping and decoration. After reading the letter, Alan smiled gently. The everyday life at the orphanage, where monthly letters had become routine, warmed his heart more and more. Though he had never seen their faces, watching the children grow thanks to his support naturally brought a smile to his lips, a father's smile. He suddenly spoke to Evan. "By the way, the 5, no, the children, how old are they now?" Evan looked curious. "Sir, why do you ask?" He continued, it is almost time for them to step into society. Some have already left the orphanage early. Most of the children you personally ordered to be brought back are now at that age. Hearing this, Alan's image of their innocence seemed to shatter slightly in his mind. He recalled the moment when the children had said, "Thank you, sir, for raising us." The 5 sent their regards. Alan immediately thought, "Ah, yes. It is about time they start living independently." Evan asked again, "Really, were not you intentionally gathering these weak children?" Alan answered calmly, "There is no reason for that. They have grown up. They need to think about their future." But his inner thoughts were different. They were raised so they would not awaken to evil. Now they can take care of themselves. Evan sighed in relief. It seems they are all healthy now. I see. Alan began to think more deeply. During each bot battle, the narration had revealed glimpses of their abilities. Yusha possessed talent and faith. The gloomy boy, Deus, had talent and swordsmanship. Rhine showed aptitude for research. The young beast girl, Seoling, was gifted in combat. Raiden had talent as a disciple or envoy. Alan suddenly lifted a box, considering, if I arrange them in the right positions, won't they be capable of occupying their rightful roles? Thinking of those kids, Alan speculated quietly to himself, since I am doing this anyway, giving each of them a gift should make them happy. After all, I promised them I would someday. Time passed, gradually shifting into the late afternoon. The golden glow of the sunset bathed the manor in warm light. Alan leaned back in his chair at the desk, stretching, and thought, all done. Evan, still with a bit of drool on his lips, ran off, calling out, "Well, I will be going now." Alan watched him go, silently pondering, if everything goes smoothly from now on, will I even get a small share of the benefits? Above them, the sky was peaceful, filled with the gentle flight of small birds. Take this letter, children, and step into the wider world, Alan's thoughts seemed to whisper to them. The scene shifted to the children themselves, recipients of Alan's message. His words had transformed into a clear command. Yusha, her usually cold expression flushed faintly red, muttered, "The instructions have arrived. This time, it is special, it is addressed to each of us individually." Now, all 5 held their letters in their hands. Deus remained composed, his face calm and unreadable as he examined his letter. Seoling bounced up and down with uncontainable excitement at the sight of hers. They no longer carried the fragile, small child demeanor of the past. Rhine gave a soft, gentle smile while Raiden remained silent, stoic as ever. Yusha lowered her gaze, staring intently at her letter, her expression betraying little emotion, revealing nothing of what she truly felt. Inside the room, everyone had gathered together, each of them focused on the sheet of paper in their hands. The order had arrived. But this time, it had been sent separately to each one of them. Solong suddenly lifted her letter and jumped with excitement. Hooray! Raiden and Rhine held their sheets quietly, their expressions thoughtful and unreadable. Holding several letters in her hands, Yusha spoke calmly. But before we do anything, we should read through the previous letters. His orders require a very high level of understanding. Solong grew even more excited. We actually get to read them. Before this, only you were able to read them, Yusha. Yusha remained composed, her voice steady and plain. If he sent individual orders to each of us, it means he has decided it is time for everyone to read them. She unfolded the letter. Yusha began reading aloud. How have you been lately? It seems you have made many talented friends. If you ever need anything, just let me know. Solong squinted at the letter, scratching her cheek in confusion. This is an order. Rhine read for a while as well, her brows knitting. It feels more like everyday small talk than anything important. Hearing that, Yusha let out a quiet, sharp laugh. Exactly. He disguised the orders as casual conversations from the very beginning. All right, watch. She began analyzing the letter so the others could follow. This is the first order after the greeting. It says, Yusha, how are you? I am doing fine. My older brother used me as a chair today. Funny, is not it? Sometimes I feel like writing to you. Reply if you are comfortable with that. And as for the child I am sending this time. Yusha continued. He designated the target to be eliminated, gave the mission, and told us to report back afterward. The letter continued as she read on. Thank you for replying. I hope you can tell me what happens at the orphanage each month. I am entrusting that place to you. You will all be fine together. Yusha explained further, breaking down every hidden instruction for them. This is where he entrusted Lam Wei to me, and as you can see, he personally chose each one of you. And here she pointed to several lines, guiding them through her reasoning. Everyone around her stared, eyes wide and mouths agape. Deus finally nodded in understanding. I see now. It was to prevent information leaks. I remember my first order clearly. Yusha smiled faintly and continued, exactly. You must understand every nuance of his orders and complete the mission accordingly. Deus suddenly suggested, then would not it be better to meet him directly, or use a magical communication device? Raiden agreed with him. He has a point. If the issue is information leaks, why use letters at all? Suddenly, Yusha's expression shifted. Her face darkened, and her eyes flashed with a cold, red light. I hope you have not forgotten, she said firmly, that all we need to do is obey the orders. Deus, witnessing Yusha's unwavering loyalty, was left speechless. It was a devotion so absolute it sent shivers down his spine. I have not forgotten, he said. Solong suddenly lifted her paper high, shouting with excitement, then let us read the orders together. The room, illuminated brightly, became a circle of focused faces. Each person began reading the orders that had been sent individually. Deus read his own aloud. He is telling me to go to Caliburn, the kingdom of knights. Solong groaned, clearly disappointed. A colony, but I do not like deserts. Raiden chimed in next. I am assigned to Roxas, the entertainment city. Rhine had been sent elsewhere. He is telling me to go to Larthania, the maze city, she explained. Yusha's eyes suddenly became mesmerizing. She clutched her letter with a look of rapture. The Holy Nation. Rosario. Everything that needs to be done is written in the letters, is not it? Deus held his letter, speaking with a detached tone. I do not know why, but he is telling me to become a knight. Solang's face lit up with excitement. And he said not to worry, the support will continue as before. Rhine smiled gently. He has even shown us the locations of the gifts. Raiden, clearly pleased, added, no matter what they are, we will find out when we get there. Seeing that everyone understood the orders, Yusha reminded them seriously, good. But remember, unless he says otherwise, under no circumstances should you mention the name Lam Wei. Her gaze grew icy, piercing each of them with cold precision. The group quickly followed the instructions, moving purposefully to different destinations. They draped themselves in black cloaks and departed from the mansion. 3 months later, in a room stacked high with books and documents, Alon sat reading. As expected, there was nothing about changes in magic or the incantations. I will have to experiment on my own, he muttered. He then turned to Evan. By the way, how's the investigation into the person who killed Leo going? Evan replied, the Intelligence Guild says they have not found anything yet. Alon frowned slightly. I see. That is disappointing. He rested his chin on his hand, deep in thought. It seems the butterfly effect has already gone beyond my control. The result of saving the 5 great sins, after all. Alon recalled the image of the cold, calculating Duchess Loria. Even Loria herself, someone who was supposed to die in the original storyline, had become the Duke of Ultia, expanding her power and influence at an astonishing speed within the underworld. The more he thought about it, the darker his expression grew. He set the book down and ordered Evan, stop the investigation into the assassin. Evan was momentarily taken aback. Huh? Really? Alon silently calculated in his mind. This was clearly one of those situations where ignorance was bliss. In the original setup, almost nothing could escape the Intelligence Guild's network. The more he thought about digging into things he should not, the more fear gripped him. His face suddenly turned pale. The result would only be that if preparing for unexpected situations led to death, it would all be meaningless. To protect himself, Alon realized he had no other choice. Secret organizations like these would not harm him as long as he did not interfere with their affairs. There was no reason for them to attack unless he approached them first. He spoke to Evan. At this rate, continuing the investigation won't be of any use. Though he did not explain his reasoning, Evan agreed. All right, I will make sure they stop the investigation. Suddenly, Evan remembered a piece of news and hurriedly told Alon. By the way, there is another thing. It seems Deus was recently knighted in Caliburn. Alan's expression remained neutral, but he spoke out of courtesy. Really? Congratulations to him, then. 3 months later, Evan came rushing to Alon, carrying a pile of food. Alon whispered to himself, admiring Evan's versatility. Truly talented. At the same time, Evan reported, by the way, Deus has even formed an entire team of knights. Alon was astonished. What, then he must have reached at least the expert level, if not higher. He recalled the ranks of knights in this world: master swordsman, sword expert, swordsman. The more he thought about it, the more impressed he became. It had not been long since Deus had received his initial knighthood. Evan added, people are saying that the world might witness the 5th great knight in less than 10 years. Alon suddenly realized what great knight meant, those called the Swords of Caliburn. Evan confirmed, yes, he is truly talented. A small sense of pride washed over Alon. I am genuinely proud of him. Evan, chewing as he spoke, added, Caliburn must be buzzing with excitement over this news. 6 months later, in a grand, magnificent castle, Alon was engrossed in his work. A year had passed since the 5 great sins left the orphanage. As he was gradually settling into his duties as a duke, Evan entered with news. Your Grace, I have just heard some very recent news. Alon continued working without looking up. Evan went on, it seems that Deus has become a sword of Caliburn. The news hit Alon like a lightning strike, causing him to drop the pen in his hand. Even more astonishingly, Deus had become the 5th great knight. Alon found the news hard to believe. He quickly asked, but only a master swordsman can become a great knight, right? Alon recalled everything he knew about becoming a knight in this world. The swordmaster of Psychedelia was a superhuman who had transcended even the art of swordsmanship itself, unlocking a unique ability known as Deen Sin. Alon turned to Evan, seeking clarification. Wait. Are you saying Deus is already a swordmaster? Evan corrected him gently. Not exactly. He is on the verge of becoming one. He has not yet manifested his own Deen Sin. Evan went on to recount Deus's rise to knighthood. Regardless, the nation had already conferred upon him the title of Great Knight, not just because he had won a duel against the 4th sword, but also because Caliburn had lost one of its great knights to the northern barbarians. Hearing this, Alon suddenly realized, right. They have been at war for over a decade. He scratched his head, and even Evan seemed a bit incredulous. Mastering and manipulating magical energy takes 15 years, and the process of Deen Sin requires at least several decades. Alon reflected on the history of the empire. Reinhardt, the first sword, had been 32 when he became the youngest great knight in recorded history. The chronicles recounted how this legendary hero had begun wielding a sword at the age of 5, ultimately earning the title of swordmaster at a young age. Alon thought to himself, indeed, Reinhardt's strength is unbelievable. Even with his talent, it took over 20 years. And yet, a child with no formal knowledge of swordsmanship has already become a great knight. Suddenly, an idea struck him. Wait. If he is only waiting to awaken his Deen Sin, could it be that he will soon surpass Reinhardt and achieve swordmaster status? The thought brought Alon an uncontainable sense of delight. He even voiced it aloud. Perhaps I can leverage his abilities sooner than expected. Evan nodded in agreement. Alon gazed at the scattered books and papers on his desk, falling into deep contemplation. Or maybe not. Perhaps that is impossible. Evan quickly waved his hand, reassuring him. No, he would not do that. Alon revealed a simple truth. He retrieved the lone letter tucked inside one of the books. I have only ever received letters from Yusha. He read aloud from Yusha's letter. Even after arriving at the Holy Kingdom, she had continued to send letters regularly, all containing updates on the 5 great sins she had grown up with. It seemed they had maintained their connection, keeping each other informed of their lives despite the distance. Alon felt a pang of loss in his heart. Even though they had never seen his face before, at the very least they should have thanked him for the gift. A small sense of guilt lingered within him. He slapped his own face sharply, as if to regain composure. Evan watched the gesture with a mixture of shock and awe. Let us get back to the main point, he said. I am already deeply grateful. They did not destroy the kingdom after awakening as the 5 great sins. The two of them stood shoulder to shoulder by the sunlit window. Alon spoke in a voice tinged with reluctant warmth. As long as they live well, that is enough for me to feel happy. Evening had fallen over the capital of Caliburn, in the central district of Kirtham, at the mansion of a high-ranking noble. The building served as the headquarters for the famed Sun Eclipse Cavalry, and inside countless knights were training rigorously. Deus, clad in armor, stood tall atop a platform, surveying the scene below. Introduced as Deus Macallion, he was the captain of the Sun Eclipse Cavalry and the youngest great knight. From above, his gaze swept over the knights beneath him, cold and unwavering. Suddenly, a young girl below noticed his presence. Her violet hair fluttering, she waved excitedly. Deus, big brother. Deus smiled and waved back. But his expression soon darkened. A wave of sadness passed through him as memories surfaced, though a full year had passed. Shame still lingered. He remembered the moment he had lost everything to those shadowy figures. The horrific images haunted his mind relentlessly. Painful memories of his childhood returned, leaving him with only an uncontrollable rage. The image of his sister, swallowed by darkness, slowly slipping away from his grasp, filled him with burning hatred. The shadows had separated him from her, and each step that widened the distance ignited his fury even more. His miserable, wandering childhood resurfaced vividly. Despite being immersed in suffering, he still held tightly to his sister's hairpin in his hand. Deus's true thoughts became clear. The fact that Dai Wei had saved his life was not reason enough for him to pledge loyalty. But because she promised he could exact revenge with his own hands, he had followed orders under the name Lam Wei. From that moment on, he had risked his life for Lam Wei, working under her as part of her organization, undergoing countless dangerous missions and rigorous training. Even when death loomed at every turn, Deus paid no heed. Revenge was all that mattered, and his own safety was irrelevant. Memories surged through his mind like a flood. Over the past few years, he had completed missions that would lay the foundation for combating the forces of darkness. And soon after, for the first time, he received a personal secret order. Deus was stunned. This was completely unexpected. What could it be? The letter revealed a small hotel in southern Caliburn. Alon had left a gift there and asked him to come see. Deus had initially paid little attention, uninterested in what the gift might be. Still, curiosity drew him to the location Alon had mentioned. Perhaps there was something there after all. When he opened the door, the sight inside left him utterly speechless. Within that unexpected letter's instructions, he saw a familiar figure, his sister. He rushed toward her, hand outstretched, longing to touch her. The gift from Dai Wei was not an object, but something far more precious, the family he had thought lost forever. Deus embraced her tightly, collapsing to the ground in overwhelming joy and emotion. The girl returned the embrace, tears streaming down her face. In that moment, what was more precious than life itself was reunited, and Deus wept silently, unable to contain his grief.